Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We are learning Mishnah's Kesubos, Perek Ches, Chapter 8, Mishna Hey, Mishna 5. Now, the previous Mishnah was discussing where a woman inherits money, fruits, and now we're going to talk about the following, continuing with this discussion of what she inherited. Navlala avadim ushvaches zekanim. She inherited basically old slaves or maidservants. Now, the point here is because they are old, they really can't produce much. So now the husband wants to go ahead and say, look, we can go ahead and sell these slaves and take the money and buy something more productive. We could buy a piece of land and work the land and be more productive. And she says, no, I don't want to sell them. I don't want to sell them. Okay? But again, we have to realize that these slaves are something that he has the rights of usage over. Right? And he's trying to say, but there's not much usage to get out of them. So we can now get more usage if we sell them, right, for whoever's going to buy them, and you'll get something for them, and then use that money, buy a parcel of land, and work the land. And we'll be able to be more productive that way. So the halacha is yimachru. They can be sold. V'yilakach behen karka. And after you sell them, what do? You go ahead and you buy land. And now, like any other piece of property, land that she brings into the marriage, that we say that she owns the body of the land, but he has control over the usage of the land, and he profits off the land. That would be what you do here also, like we said about if she inherits fruits, if she inherits cash. In all these cases, we say that in this case is unique, because in the other cases, like fruits and cash, we say that, he has the rights of usage, but he's got to make sure something's left for her of the principal. So therefore, we say in those cases, go ahead, sell them, buy a piece of land, work, and let him work the land, as if he were to have if she were to brought a piece of, as he does when she brings a piece of property into the marriage. But in this case, we're talking about where you have these slaves, and there's just not much to do with them. There's not much to do with them. It's not a question here of, if I use them, she'll have nothing left. Not necessarily. She'll have something left. But the point, his argument is, though, we're not making much, we can get better, we can make more if we sell, we can get more productivity if we sell them. So the Mishnah says, according to the first opinion, they may be sold. What do you do with the money? Buy a piece of land, and then again, he eats the fruits, like any other piece of land that she owns. But Shimon Gamliel says, nope. If she doesn't want it to be sold, they cannot be sold. Because she can claim they represent the glory of her father's house. Meaning, apparently it was a prestige to have these servants. She inherited them from her father. And she says that holding on to them, this is considered the prestige, the honor of my father's house. And therefore, I don't want to sell it. And according to the Shimon Gamliel, she has a right to hold her husband back from selling it. Because there's this concept of this is the glory of her father's house, and that is something that she has a right, and he has an obligation to keep up. And therefore, according to Shimon Gamliel, he cannot sell it. And the Bartanura says, this is the halacha, that if she doesn't want to sell those slaves, that he can't sell them. Now, a similar case. Navlula zeisim ugafanim. What fell to her, what she inherited was zeisim ugafanim, olive trees and grapevines, zakanim, but they were old. So again, they're not producing much. They're not producing much fruit. Okay. So now again, a similar situation. He wants to sell them. What's he going to sell them for? So it says, Yimachru la'etzim. He can sell them as firewood. Because by selling them for firewood, again, he's going to make more money out of them. And then again, what's he going to do? He's going to, v'yilakach ben karka, then he'll go and buy a piece of land, v'yechal peris, and he eats the fruits of the land. It's a similar case. But now it's not talking about servants. It's talking about these trees, olive trees, grapevines.
Unproductive produces.
Right, but they're not producing much. Now, so what do you want to do with them? Sell them as firewood. So he says, yes, you could. Sell them for firewood, take the money, buy land, and he eats the fruits. Rabbi Yehuda says, Loi simkar. No, the halacha is she can force him not to sell. Why? Because again, she can claim to represent the glory of her father's house. These trees, the olive trees, the grapevines, they represent the glory of her father's house, and therefore, again, this is something she can demand should be kept up, and according to Yehuda, this is what has to be done. And again, the Bartanura points out, this is the halacha, that in the case of the trees also, not just by service, by the trees also, she can claim no sale because of the fact that this is the glory of her father's house, and therefore, he may not sell it. Okay, now next. A person put out money, spent money on his wife's property. Okay, meaning there was the property brought into the marriage, and then he went and he worked the land. He worked on improving the land, right? He spent money on the land. Okay, so what did he? He spent money on the land, his own money, on the property of his wife, and then he divorced her. So what's the question? He wants to go back and say, I want compensation for what I put for the money that I spent on your property. Don't forget, it's her property. She owns it. He spent the money to work on it to improve it. And now when he's divorcing her, he wants to get compensated. So the Mishnah says, let's say he spent a lot of money and he only ate a little bit. He spent a lot of money to try to improve the land, and not much came out of it. But he ate a little bit. Kima v'achal harbe. Let's say he spent a little bit of money, v'achal harbe, ate a lot. He was very successful. It worked out very well. He spent less than he actually gained from it. Ma sha'haitzi haitzi, ma sha'achal achal. What he spent, and what he ate. That means to say, that's it. That's part of, at the end of the day, this is part of the risks, right? Just like when you buy a piece of land, there are risks and how much you put into the land and how much you get out of it. In this case, also, we say that the same thing follows. It may have been her land, but his usage of the land carries with it risks. And even if he spent more than what he ate from it, what he gained from it, that's it. He cannot demand anything back. However, the Mishnah concludes, let's say he went ahead and he spent money and he didn't eat anything. He didn't gain anything from it, and then he divorced her. Then we say Yishava Kama Haitzi V'ito. Then he swears how much he spent, and that amount of money he can demand from his wife. Now, the explanation here is, although he is unable to claim compensation in the event of a loss, that is true only where he ate at least some of the produce. By enjoying some benefit from the land, he shows that he invested in it for the sake of his personal gain. He is thus like a person who spends money on his property, who accepts the risk of losing everything he puts into it. Basically, you gained from it, so we see it as you did it for yourself. However, if he did not eat any of the produce, then we say it's different. Then, since he didn't benefit from it, his wife benefited from it because he improved the land, right? He spent the money to improve the land. And at the end, for some reason, he never, by the time they divorced, he never produced anything. But he spent the money and improved the land. So he didn't benefit from it, but she did benefit from it. Then he has the right to be compensated. However, they point out like this here in the notes. However, she pays him no more than the value of the improvement to her land. The Mishnah's wording is he swears how much he spent. But actually, the way it's bringing down here from the commentaries, from the Bartanura, it really comes out she pays no more than the value of the improvement to her land. How much money did her land go up? That improvement in her land, the value of the land, or the increase of value of the land for the improvement, that increase is what she pays him. When the Mishnah says that she pays him what he spent, it refers to a case where his expenses were less than or the same as the value of the improvement. If the expenses were greater than the improvement, she need pay only for the improvement, and he loses the difference. You follow that? There's a difference here. In the situation, when the Mishnah says he swears to how much he spent, that's talking about where his expenses were less than or the same as the value of the improvement. Okay, then we say, all right, so tell us how much he spent, and we're going to pay you. But if the expenses were greater than the improvement, she need pay only for the improvement, and he loses the difference. Okay, that's a very interesting point. And then he brings down the husband, the notes here bring down, the husband may be compared to someone who makes improvements to someone else's property without being asked. There too, the owner pays him either the amount of his expenses or the value of the improvement, whichever is less. You walk over to come into my field. You do me a favor, but you didn't ask me to do it. But you went and you worked on my field, you improved it. So you say, hey, I improved your field. Pay me, I deserve something for it. So we say to him, look, it works like this. If it's going to depend, you're either going to get your expenses or the value of improvement, whichever is less. And that's the same thing that's happening here. Mm-hmm. Whichever is less, whether the amount of expenses are less or the improvement is less, that is what he's going to pay. All right. So the situation now with the Chofetz Chaim was where the woman, the bride's father, or the prospective bride, the girl's father, is promising a lot, and you're saying to yourself, there is no way he's going to keep this. He's going to keep his promises in dowry, his promises in support. Not going to keep it. So the Chofetz Chaim says, before you tell the young man, you have to, number one, think through to make sure that he is going to trick him, that the girl's father is going to trick him, because he knows what kind of very dishonest person he is, or how really poor he is, or he heard him say he's not going to keep it. But he said, but just because the person doesn't seem to be able to take care of it, that's not a reason, because many times those people actually take care of things better than the people who have the money to do it. Now, you have to be sure that if the chassan would know, he wouldn't agree. Sometimes the young man isn't really, even if he knows he's not going to keep exactly what he says, as long as he's going to get something, he's all right. But again, the whole match doesn't depend on it. Here, clearly, you can't go and tell him, because what are you telling him for? He's not going to break up the shidduch anyway, and because all he's looking for is something, some kind of support, some kind of a dowry, and whether he's going to keep exactly his words or not doesn't make a difference to him. So then, what are you telling him for? Then the Chofetz Chaim adds, meaning, let's say, all right, you don't want to make the shidduch, right? But he's making you a promise, and he promised you should get it. If by telling the chassan this, what you want to do is you want to give him advice how to get what he promises you. That's a different story. A different story. If you're telling him, and the point is that it has no purpose, he's not going to break up things. So then, what are you telling him for? But if you're telling him, even if he's not going to break up, but you're telling him because by telling him now you could actually help him, get out of the girl's father what he's promising and not planning on keeping, and you tell him again because in that case you're doing it to help him out, and there's a purpose. Have a wonderful day.